Why, hello, hello. How are we? How are we? How are we? As always, introductions first. My name is Ruin, and I am the Archsage, or Arcanum Exodius, our humble little library on this corner of the internet. Welcome, 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 welcome. So, we're going to be reading The Hobbit just in a little bit. Let me get the music up and running. I gotta exit, gotta do this, this, I know on my schedule, if you're in the Discord, I updated the schedule just a little wee bit. I do post periodic updates, but I was getting ready for stream like an hour ago, and then I stopped and went, it's been like 2 days since I've had a shower. Ugh, 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 ugh. Oh, goodness gracious. So I had to shave, shower, and do all those things that make you a person before I came on. Even though you guys can't see my face, I think it makes a difference. I really, really, really do. Okay, so let's get started. Let me get the music going. All right, and check. Make sure it's not too loud. We'll pick up. So you are guaranteed to get at least a chapter out of me. We're on chapter 6. For reference, I think there's a grand total because we're almost halfway through the book. Let's see, there's a grand total. We're on chapter 6. That's chapter 19, so there's only 13 chapters. Ah, oh, Alien 3. Alien 3 wasn't bad. Alien 3 wasn't bad. Welcome in, Vic. Look all you want. Look all you want. Okay. Uh, so you're guaranteed, if this is your first time here for us when we're reading, what I like to do is I like to at least get one chapter in a stream. But if I find a good stopping point, because I don't like to stop halfway through, especially if people are following along back at home, because every person's going to have a different edition, and that's okay. But all the editions, if the pages don't line up, the chapters should. So I like to stop at the start of a chapter. So I always try to get through and go chapter by chapter, but usually roughly about 2 hours into stream, that's when we're gonna stop and then raid out. And that's partially because my voice starts to go after about 2 hours, and partially because usually it takes about 2 hours to get through one or two chapters. So, but with that said, welcome in. I'm gonna get a sippy, and then we'll begin. Chapter 6. Oh, as a summary, I should remind you guys where are we at? Well, we're past the last homely home. They had met Elrond. They vacationed with him for about 2 or 3 weeks, roughly, after losing all of their supplies to the trolls. All right. So they lost all supplies to troll. Well, they got attacked by the trolls. Somehow they lost all of their supplies before then. I don't remember exactly how. I'd have to go back and look in. Okay, so we had trolls, then Elrond. They vacationed with him for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then after that, Elrond provisioned them with lots of really good supplies. Okay, but during the middle of a thunderstorm, a thunder battle, as the book says, um, they take they take refuge in a cave, and this cave is actually a goblin den that opens up beneath them, and they all fall into a giant, bigger cave complex in the middle of the mountains, where they just barely manage to escape out of. They lose all of Elrond's supplies, though. That's the bad part. All of Elrond's supplies are gone. And then Bilbo has his own adventure where he meets Gollum. Oh, Gollum. Gollum. Where he meets Gollum slash Smeagol. Okay. And so he has his own adventure, and he discovers the One Ring, although it's not called that at this time, and manages to inadvertently steal it from Gollum. Alright, Gollum lost it in a tunnel, and Bilbo grabbed it, found it, and managed to use it as part of a little game that they had to escape him, and then escape himself while being chased by Gollum at first. And then once Bilbo got past the Gollum's territory and went back into the Goblins' territory, the Goblins chased him. So now, that's why the chapter name is Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire. They have just left the territory of the Goblins, but they are not out of trouble yet. Alright, Chapter 6, Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire. Bilbo had escaped the goblins, but he did not know where he was. He had lost hood, cloak, food, pony, his buttons, and his friends. He wandered on and on till the sun began to sink westward, behind the mountains. Their shadows fell across Bilbo's path, and he looked back. Then he looked forward, and he could see before him only ridges and slopes falling towards the lowlands, and plains glimpsed occasionally between the trees. "Good heavens!" he exclaimed. "I seem to have gotten right to the other side of the misty mountains, right on the edge of the land beyond. Where, oh where, Gandalf and the dwarves have got to. Oh, I only hope to goodness that they're still not back there in the power of the goblins." He still wandered on, out of the little high valley, over its edge, and down the slopes beyond. But all the while a very uncomfortable thought was growing inside of him. He wondered whether he ought not, now he had the magic ring, to go back into that horrible, horrible tunnels and look for his friends. He had just made up his mind that it was his duty, that he must turn back. Very miserable he felt about it when he heard voices. He stopped and listened and listened and listened. They did not sound like goblins, so he crept forward carefully. He was on a stony path winding downwards with a rocky wall on the left hand. On the other side, the ground sloped away, and there were dells below the level of the path, overhung with bushes and low trees. In one of these dells, under the bushes, people were talking. He crept still nearer, and suddenly saw peering between two big boulders a head with a red hood on it. It was Balin. Balin, doing lookout. He could have clapped and shouted for joy, but did not. He had still got the ring on, for fear of meeting something unexpected and unpleasant, and he saw that Balin was looking straight at him without noticing him. I'll give them all a surprise, he thought, as he crawled into the bushes at the edge of the dell. Gandalf was arguing with the dwarves. They were discussing all that had happened to them in the tunnels, and wondering and debating what they were to do now. The dwarves were grumbling, and Gandalf was saying that they could not possibly go on without their journey, leaving Mr. Baggins in the hands of the goblins, without trying to find out if he was alive or dead, and without trying to rescue him. "After all, he is my friend," said Gandalf, "and not a bad little chap. I feel responsible for him." I wish to goodness you had not lost him. The dwarves wanted to know why they had never been brought at all, why he could not stick to his friends and come along with them, and why the wizard had not chosen some with more sense. "It's been more trouble than use so far," said one dwarf. "If we have to go back now into those abominable tunnels to look for him, then drat him. Drat him, I say." Becoming Victorian. Drat him. I said good day to you, sir. Oh, goodness. Gandalf answered angrily. I brought him, and I don't bring things that are of no use. Either you help me look for him, or I can go and leave you here to get out of the mess as best as you can yourselves. If you can only find him again, you'll thank me before all is over. Whatever did you want and go drop him for, Dory? You would have dropped him. You would have dropped him if a goblin had suddenly grabbed your legs from behind in the dark, tripped up your feet, and kicked you in the back. Then, why didn't you pick him back up again? Good heavens! Can you ask? Goblins fighting and biting in the dark, everybody falling over bodies and hitting one another. You nearly chopped off my head with Glamdring. And Thorin was stabbing here and there and everywhere with Orcus. All of a sudden, you gave one of your blinding flashes, and we saw the goblins running back, yelping. You shouted, "Follow me, everybody!" and everybody ought to have followed. We thought everybody had. There was no time to count, as you quite well know, till we dashed through the gate guards, out the lower door, and helter-skelter down here. And here we are, without the burglar! Confused to be. And here's the burglar, said Bilbo, stepping down the middle of them, slipping off the ring. Bless me, how they jumped. They then shouted with surprise and delight. Gandalf was astonished as any of them, but probably more pleased than all the others. He called to Balin and said to him that he thought of a lookout man who let people walk into them like that without warning. As a fact, Bilbo's reputation went up a very great deal with the dwarves after this. If they had still doubted that he was really a first-class burglar, in spite of Gandalf's words, they doubted no longer. Balin was most puzzled of all, but everyone said it was a very clever bit of work. Indeed, Bilbo was so pleased with their praise that he chuckled inside and said nothing about the ring. And when they asked him how he did it, he said, "Oh, just crept along, very, very carefully and quietly." I'm sorry, that's such a rogue thing to say. I love it. Like in terms of D&D, that's exactly like what the party rogue would say. "Oh, I just did very carefully and quietly," while pocketing the... Indeed, Bilbo was so pleased with their praise that he just chuckled inside and said nothing whatsoever. "Well, it was the first time that even a mouse has crept along carefully and quietly under my nose and not been spotted," said Balin. "I take off my hood to you," which Balin did. "Balin, at your service." "Your servant, Mr. Baggins," replied Bilbo. Then he wanted to know all about his adventures after they had lost him. He sat down and told them everything, except about finding of the ring. Not just now, he thought. The ring, kind of. Tolkien foreshadows it before, but yeah. They're particularly interested in the riddle competition, and shuddered most appreciatively at his description of Gollum. And I couldn't think of any other questions with him sitting beside me, so I said, "What's in my pocket?" He couldn't guess in 3 goes, so I said, "What about your promise? Show me the way out." But he came at me to kill me, and I ran, and I fell over, and he missed me in the dark, and I followed him because I heard him talking to himself. He thought I really knew the way out, and so he was making for it, and he sat down in the entrance, and I could not get by, so I jumped over him and escaped and ran down to the gate. What about the guards? Weren't there any? Oh, yeah, lots of them, but I dodged them. I got a stick in the door, which was only open a crack, and I lost lots of buttons, he said, sadly, looking at his torn clothes. But I squeezed through all right, and here I am. The dwarves looked on with quite a new respect when he talked about dodging guards, jumping over Gollum, and squeezing through, as if it was not very difficult or very alarming. "Oh, what did I tell you?" said Gandalf, laughing. "Mr. Baggins has more about him than you guess." He gave Bilbo a queer look from underneath his bushy eyebrows as he said this, and the Hobbit wondered if he'd guessed any part of his tale that he had left out. Then he had questions of his own to ask, for if Gandalf had explained it all by now to the dwarves, Bilbo had not heard it. He wanted to know how the wizard had turned up again, and where they had all got to now. The wizard, to tell the truth, never mind explaining his cleverness more than once, so now he told Bilbo that both he and Elrond had been well aware of the presence of evil goblins in that part of the mountains, but their main gate used to come out on a different pass, one more easy to travel by, so that they often caught people benighted near their gates. Eventually, people had given up going that way, and the goblins must have opened their new entrance at the top of the pass the dwarves had taken, quite recently because it had been found quite safe up till now. I must see if I can find a more, or less, decent giant to block it up again, said Gandalf. Or soon there'll be no one getting over the mountains at all. As soon as Gandalf had heard Bilbo's yell, he realized what had happened. In a flash, he killed the goblins that were grabbing him. He had nipped inside the crack just as it snapped so. He followed after the drivers and prisoners right to the edge of the Great Hall, and there he sat down and worked up the best magic he could in the shadows. Very ticklish business it was. Touch and go, you might say. But of course, Gandalf had made a special study of bewitchments of fire and lights. Even the Hobbit had never forgotten the magic fireworks at old Took's Midsummer's parties, as you remember. The rest, well, we all know. Except Gandalf knew all about the back door, as the goblins called the lower gate, where Bilbo lost his buttons. As a matter of fact, it was well known to anybody that was acquainted with this part of the mountains, but to a wizard to keep his head in the tunnels and guide them in the right direction. They made that gate ages ago. Partly for a way of escape, if they needed one, partly as a way out into the lands beyond, but they still come into the dark and do great damage. They guard it always, and no one has managed to block it up. They'll guard it doubly so after this. All the others laughed along with Gandalf. After all, they had all lost a good deal, but they had killed the great goblin and a great many others besides, and they had all escaped. So, they might have said to have the best of it so far. But the wizard called them to his senses. We must be getting on at once. Now we are a little rested, Gandalf said. They will be out after us in hundreds when night comes, and already shadows are lengthening. They can still smell our footsteps for hours and hours after we pass. It must be miles on before dusk. There will be a bit of moon, if it keeps fine, and, well, if we're lucky. Not that they mind the moon much, but it will give us a little light to steer by. Oh, they're gonna get hunted by goblins. Goblins and wargs. Well, not actually wargs, if I remember. I think it's actually wolves, but let's read on. Let's read on. Make sure 90. Yep. Oh, yes, he said. In answer to most more questions from the Hobbit. He lose track of time inside goblin tunnels. Today's Thursday, and it was Monday night or Tuesday morning that we were captured. We have gone miles and miles and miles and miles, come right down through the heart of the mountains, and are now on the other side. Quite a shortcut. But we are not at the point which our pass would have brought us. We're too far to the north, and there is some awkward country ahead. And we are still pretty high up. Let's get on. Oh, I am dreadfully hungry, groaned Bilbo, who was suddenly aware that he had not had a meal since the night before last. Just think of that for a hobbit. His stomach felt all empty and loose and his legs all wobbly now that the excitement was over. Can't help it, said Gandalf, unless you'd like to go back and, well, ask the goblins nicely to let you have your pony back and your luggage. No, thank you. Very well then. I just find that sort of exchange to be funny. Very well then. We just might tighten our belts and trudge on, or we shall be made into supper, and that'll be much worse than having none ourselves. They went on. As they went, Bilbo looked from side to side for something to eat, but the blackberries were still only in flower, and of course there were no nuts, not even hawthorn berries. He nibbled a bit of sorrel, and he drank from a small mountain stream that crossed the path, and he ate 3 wild strawberries that he found on its bank, but it was not much good. Oh, that poor little rabbit hopping. They still went on. The rough path disappeared. The bushes and long grasses between the boulders, the patch of rabbit cropped turf, the thyme and sage and marjoram and the yellow rock roses all vanished, and they found themselves at the top of a wide, steep slope of fallen stones, the remains of a landslide. When they began to go down, this rubbish and small pebbles rolled away from their feet. Soon longer bits of split stone went clattering down, and started other pieces below them slithering and rolling. Then lumps of rocks were disturbed, and bounded off, crashing down with a dust and a noise. Before long, the whole slope above them and below them seemed on the move, and they were sliding away, huddled all together in a fearful confusion of slipping, rattling, cracking slabs and stones. Oh, gods, that's awful. Oh, it was the trees at the bottom that saved them. They slid to the edge of a climbing wood of pines that so to you right on the mountain slope from the deeper, darker forests of the valleys below. Some caught hold of the trunks and swung themselves into the low branches. Some, like the little hobbit, got behind a tree to shelter them from the onslaught of rocks. Soon the danger was over and the slide had stopped, and the last faint crashes could be heard at the largest of the disturbed stones, rebounding and spinning among the bracken and the pine roots far below. Ha! That has got us for a bit, said Gandalf. Even goblins tracking us will have a job to come down here quietly. I dare say, grumbled Bombur, but they won't find it difficult to send stones bouncing down on our heads. The dwarves and Bilbo were feeling far from happy and rubbing their bruised and damaged legs and feet. Nonsense. We're going to turn aside here out of the path of the slide. We must be quick. Look at the light. The sun had gone behind the mountains. Already the shadows were deepening about them, though far away through the doors and over the black tops of the woods. Growing lower down, they could still see the evening lights on the plains beyond. They limped along now as fast as if they were able to go down the gently slopes of a pine forest, in a slanting path already leading stiffly southwards. At times they were pushing through a sea of bracken with tall fronds rising right above the hobbit's head. At times they were marching on quiet as quiet can be over a floor of pine needles, and all while the forest gloom got heavier and the forest silence deeper. Ooh, that is... Ooh. There was no wind that evening to bring even a sea sighing to the branches of the trees. I'm going to take a sippy. You all should take sippies too. Alright? Take a sippy. Stretchy, stretchy. And okay. Alright. Let's get back to it. Go further, asked Bilbo. It was so dark that he could only see Thorin's beard wagging beside him, and so quiet that he could only hear the dwarves breathing like a loud noise. Oh, my toes. My toes. They're all so bruised and bent, and my legs ache, and my stomach is wagging like an empty sack. Further, said Gandalf. After what seemed ages further, they came suddenly to an opening where no trees grew. The moon was up and was shining into the clearing. Somehow it struck all of them as not at all a nice place. There was nothing wrong to see. All of a sudden they heard a howl away downhill, a long shuddering howl. It was answered by another away to the right, a good deal nearer to them, then by another not far away to the left. It was the wolves howling at the moon, wolves gathering together. There were no wolves living near Baggins' hole at home, but he knew that noise. He had it described to him often enough in tales. One of his elder cousins on the Took side, who had been a great traveler, used to imitate it to frighten him. To hear it out in the forest under the moon was too much for Bilbo. Even magic rings are not much use against wolves, especially against the evil packs that lived under the shadow of the goblin-infested mountains, off the edge of the wild on the borders of the unknown. Wolves of that sort smell keener than goblins and do not need to see you to catch you. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What shall we do? What shall we do? What shall we do? Bilbo cried, escaping goblins so to be caught by wolves. And he said, and it became a proverb, though now we say out of the frying pan into the fire, in the same sort of uncomfortable situations. I don't know, I kind of like that proverb better. Alright, can we adopt that one instead? Escaping goblins to be caught by wolves. I kind of like that better. I've known a few IRL goblins, for sure. Trees, quick! Cried Gandalf, and they ran to the trees at the edge of the glade, hunting for those that had branches fairly low, or slender through to swarm up. They found them as quick as ever they could, you can guess, and then up they went as high as ever they could trust the branches. You would have laughed, well, from a safe distance, if you had seen the dwarves sitting up in the trees with their beards dangling down, like old gentlemen gone cracked and playing at being boys. Billy and Gilly with the top of a tall lark like an enormous Christmas tree. Dory, Nori, Oin, and Gloin were more comfortable in a huge pen with regular branches sticking out at intervals like the spokes of a wheel. Bilford, Boffer, Bomfer, and Thorin were in another. Dwalin and Balin had swarmed up a tall, stunted fir with a few branches, were trying to find a place to sit in the greenery of the topmost boughs. Gandalf, who was a good deal taller than the others, had found a tree into which they could not climb, a large pine standing at the very edge of the glade. He was quite hidden in its boughs, but you could see his eyes gleaming in the moon as he peeked out. And Bilbo, he couldn't get into any tree. He was scuttling about from trunk to trunk like a rabbit that has lost its hole and has a dog after it. "You left the burglar behind again," said Nori to Dory. "I can't always be carrying burglars on my back," said Dory. "Down tunnels and up trees? What do you think I am, a porter?" "He'll be eaten if we don't do something," said Thorin, for there were howls all about them now, getting nearer and nearer. "Dory!" he called, for Dory was lowest down in the easiest tree. "Be quick and give Mr. Baggins a hand up." Dory was really a decent fellow in spite of his grumbling. Poor Bilbo could not reach his hand even when he climbed down to the bottom branch, and his arm down as far as he ever could. So Dory actually climbed out of the tree and let Bilbo scramble up and stand on his back. Just at that moment the wolves trotted howling into the clearing. All of a sudden there were hundreds of eyes looking at them. Still Dory did not let Bilbo down. He waited until he had clambered off his shoulders into branches, and then he jumped off for the branches himself. Only just in time. A wolf snapped at his cloak as he swung up and nearly got him. In a minute there was a whole pack of them yelping all around the tree and leaping up at the trunk, with eyes blazing and tongues hanging out. but not even the wild wargs. Or, oh, they actually are called wargs. Oh, okay. For so the evil wolves over the edge of the wild were named, cannot climb trees. For a time they were safe. Lucky it was warm and not windy. Trees are not very comfortable to sit in for any long at any time, but in the cold and wind, with wolves all around below waiting for you, they can be perfectly miserable places. The glade in the ring of trees was evidently a meeting place of the wolves. More and more kept coming in. They left guards at the foot of the tree in which Dory and Bilbo were, and went snuffling about till they had smelt out every tree that had anyone in it. Those they guarded too. All the rest, hundreds and hundreds it seemed, went and sat in a great circle in the glade, and in the middle of that circle was a great grey wolf. He spoke to them in the dreadful language of the wargs. Gandalf understood it. Bilbo did not, but it sounded terrible to him, and as if all that talk was about cruel and wicked things, as it was. Every now and then all the wargs in the circle would answer their grey chief all together, and their dreadful clamour almost made the hobbit fall out of his pine tree. I will tell you what Gandalf was talking, what Gandalf heard, though Bilbo did not understand it. The wargs and goblins often helped one another in wicked deeds. Goblins do not usually venture far from their mountains, unless they are driven out and are looking for new homes, or are marching to war, which I am glad to say has not happened for a long while. But in those days they sometimes used to go on raids, especially to get food or slaves to work for them. Then they often got the wargs to help and share their plunder with them. Sometimes they rode on wolves like men do on horses. Now it seemed that a great goblin raid had been planned for that very night. The wargs had come to meet the goblins, and the goblins were late. The reason, no doubt, was of the death of the great goblin, and all the excitement caused by dwarves and the Bilbo and the wizard, for whom they were probably still hunting. In spite of the dangers in this land, bold men of late had been making their way back into it from the south, cutting down trees and building themselves places to live in among the more pleasant woods in the valleys and along the river shores. There were many of them, and they were brave and well armed, and even the wargs dared not attack them if there were many together, or in the bright day. But now they had planned with the goblins' help to come by night upon some of the villages nearest the mountains. If their plan had been carried out, there would have been none left there next day off. All would have been killed except for the few goblins kept from the wolves and carried back as prisoners to their caves. This was dreadful talk to listen to, not only because of the brave woodmen and their wives and children, but also because of the danger which now threatened Gandalf and his friends. The wargs were angry and puzzled at finding them in their very meeting place. They thought they were friends of the woodmen, and would come to spy on them, and would take news of their plans down to their valleys, and then the goblins and wolves would have to fight a terrible battle instead of capturing prisoners and devouring people wake suddenly from their sleep. So the wargs had no intention of going away and letting people at the trees escape. At any rate, not until morning, and long before that, they said, goblin soldiers were coming down from the mountains, and goblins can climb trees, or cut them down. But now you understand why Gandalf, listening to their growling yelping, began to feel dreadfully afraid, wizard though he was, and to feel that they were in a very bad place and had not escaped at all. All the same, he was not going to let them have it all their own way, and though he cannot do very much, stuck up in a tall tree with wolves all around the ground. Gathered the huge pine cones from the branches of the tree, and they set one alight with bright blue fire and threw it whizzing down among the circle of wolves. It struck one on the back, and immediately his shaggy coat caught fire. He was leaping to and fro, yelping horribly. I swear I can speak English. Shaved my beard today, so I got more to shave tomorrow, but everything's all itchy from the shavings, even though I shaved and then took a shower. It's just like, Yeah, we got more to shave tomorrow, but it's a start. missed when I was younger and I just didn't grow a beard. I missed that. Like, that was a while ago, mind you, but like, I think a lot of guys can attest to when you don't have to shave every day. I think that's why a lot of old men just say screw it and stop shaving. But I bet that's the same for women too, where you just get to a point where it's like I'm done doing this social ritual. I don't need to do it. Then another blue pine cone came, and another, one in blue flames, one in red, another in green. They burst on the ground in the middle of the circle and went off in colored sparks and smoke. Especially a large one hit the chief wolf on the nose, and he leapt in the air 10 feet and rushed around and round the circle, biting and snapping even at the other wolves in his anger and fright. The dwarves and Bilbo shouted and cheered. The rage of the wolves were terribly to see, and the commotion they made filled all the forest. Wolves were afraid of fire at all times, but there was a most horrible and uncanny fire. If a spark got in their coats, it struck and burned into them. Unless they rolled over quick, they were soon all in flames. Very soon, all about the glade, wolves were rolling over and over to put out the sparks on their backs, while those that were burning were running down, howling and setting others alight. So their own friends chased them away, and they fled off down the slopes, crying and yammering, looking for water. "What is all this uproar in the forest tonight?" said the Lord of the Eagles. He was here sitting, black in moonlight, on the top of a lonely pinnacle of rock on the eastern edge of the mountains. "I hear wolves' voices, or the goblins at mischief in the woods." He swept up in the air, and immediately two of his guards from the rocks at either hand leapt up to follow him. They circled up in the sky and looked down upon the ring of the wargs, a tiny spot far, far below. But eagles have keen eyes that can see small things at a great distance. The Lord of the Eagles of the Misty Mountains had eyes that could look at the sun unblinking. They could see a rabbit moving on the ground a true mile below even in the moonlight. So he could not see the people in the trees. He could make out the commotion among the wolves and see tiny flashes of fire and hear the howling and yelping come up faint far beneath them. Also, he could see the glint of the moon on goblin spears and helmets, as long as the wicked folk kept down the hillsides from their gaze and wound into the wood. Eagles are not kindly birds. Some are cowardly, cruel, but the ancient race of the northern mountains were the greatest of all birds. They were proud and strong and noble-hearted. They did not love goblins or fear them. When they took any notice of them at all, which was seldom, for they did not eat such creatures, they swooped on them and drove them shrieking back to their caves, and stopped whatever wickedness they were doing. The goblins hated the eagles and feared them, but could not reach their lofty seats or drive them from the mountains. Tonight the Lord of the Eagles was filled with curiosity to know what was afoot, so he summoned many other eagles to him, and they flew away from the mountains, and slowly circling ever round and round and round, they came down, down, down towards the ring of the wolves and the meeting place of the goblins. A very good thing, too. Dreadful things had been going on down there. The wolves had caught fire and fled into the forest that had set alight in several places. It was high summer, and at least inside of the mountains there had been little rain for some time. Whoa, that's dangerous. Pine forests can catch on fire very easily. Dried pine needles make some amazing kindling. I remember that from Boy Scouts. Okay. If you are out in the woods and you need kindling, dried pine needles, not wet. Never use wet anything unless you absolutely have to. But dried pine needles, okay. They're in a pine forest. That's actually scary. That thing can light on fire very easily. It was high summer on the eastern side of the mountains. There had been little rain for some time. Yellowing bracken, fallen branches, the old pine needles, and here and there dead trees were soon in flames. All around the clearing the warg fire was sleeping, but the wolf guards did not leave their trees. Mad and in anger, they were leaping and howling around the trunks, cursing their dwarves in their horrible language, with their tongues hanging out and their eyes shining as red and fierce as the flames. Then suddenly goblins came up running, yelling, They thought a battle with the woodmen was going on, but soon they learned what had really happened. Some of them actually sat down and laughed. Others waved their spears and clashed their shafts against their shields. Goblins are not afraid of fire, and they soon had a plan which it seemed to them most amusing. Some got all wolves together in a pack, some stacked fern and brushwood around the tree trunks, others rushed around and stamped and beat and stamped and beat until nearly all the flames were put out. But they did not put out the fire nearest to the trees where the dwarfs were. That fire they fed. They fed that fire with leaves and dead branches and bracken. Soon they had a ring of smoke and flame all around the dwarves, a ring which they kept from spreading outwards, but it closed slowly, slowly, till the running fire was licking the fuel piled into the trees. Smoke was in Bilbo's eyes. He could feel the heat of the flames, and through the reek he could see the goblins dancing around and around and around and around in a circle like people round a midsummer bonfire. Outside, the ring of dancing warriors with spears and axes stood the wolves at a respectful distance, watching and waiting. You could hear the goblins beginning a horrible, horrible, horrendous song. Oh, I'll do my best. 15 birds and 5 fir trees, their feathers were fanned in fiery breeze. But funny little birds, they had no wings. Oh, what shall we do with the funny little things? Roast them alive, chew them in a pot, fry them, boil them, or eat them hot. Oh, goblins. Then stopped and shouted out, fly away, little birds, fly away if you can. Come down, little birds, or you'll get roasted in your nest. Sing, little birds, why don't you sing? In response, Gandalf shouted, go away, little boys. It isn't bird nesting time. Also, naughty little boys that play with fire get punished. He said to make them angry and show them that he was not frightened of them. Though, of course, he was, wizard though he was. But they took no notice, and they went on singing. Burn, 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 tree and fern, Shrivelin's torch, vigiling torch, to light the might for our delight. Oh, hey! Bake and roast them, toast them, fry them, roast them, till beards blaze and eyes glaze, till hair smells and skin cracks, fat melts and bone blacks, and cinders lie beneath the sky, so dwarfs shall die. So dwarfs shall die and light the night for our delight. Oh hey, oh Harry, hey, oh hey. I can see this. Just them being little gremlins. Alright. With the ho hey, their flames were under Gandalf's tree. In a moment it spread to the others. The bark caught fire, the lower branches cracked, then Gandalf climbed up to the top of the trees. The sudden splendor flashed from his wand like lightning as he got ready to spring down from the high right among the spears of the goblins. That that would have been the end of him, though he would have probably killed many of them as he came hurtling down like a thunderbolt, but he never leaped. Just at that moment, the Lord of the Eagles swept down from above, seized him in his talons, and was gone. There was a howl of anger and surprise from the goblins. Loud cried the Lord of the Eagles, to whom Gandalf had now spoken. Back swept the great birds that were with them, and down they came like huge black shadows. The wolves yammered and gnashed their teeth as the goblins yelled and stamped with rage, and flung their heavy spears in the air in vain. Over them swooped the eagles, the dark rush of their beating wings smote them to the floor, drove them far away. Their talons tore at goblin faces. Other birds flew to the treetops and seized the dwarfs, who were scrambling up now as far as they ever dared go. Poor little Bilbo was very nearly left behind again. He just managed to catch a hold of Dory's legs as Dory was borne off last of all, and up they went together above the tumult, the burning. Bill was swinging in the air with his arms nearly breaking. And now far below, the goblins and the wolves were scattering far and wide into the woods. A few eagles were still circling and sweeping above the battleground. The flames about the trees suddenly sprang up above the highest branches. They were up in crackling fire. There was suddenly a flurry of sparks and smoke. Bilbo had escaped only just in time. Soon the light of the burning was faint below, a red twinkling on the black floor, and they were high up in the sky, rising all the time in strong sweeping circles. Bilbo never forgot that flight, clinging onto Dory's ankles. He moaned, "My arms! My arms!" But Dory groaned, "My poor legs! My poor legs!" Tolkien has such a sense of humor, I love it. At the best of times, heights made Bilbo giddy. He used to turn strange if he looked over the edge of quite a little cliff, and he never liked ladders, let alone trees, never having to escape from wolves before. So you can imagine how his head swam now when he looked down between his dangling toes and saw the dark lands opening wide beneath him, touched here and there with the light of a moon on a hillside rock or a stream in the plains. The pale peaks of the mountains were coming nearer, moonlight spikes of rocks sitting out of black shadows. Summer or not, it seemed very cold. He shut his eyes and wondered if he could hold on any longer. Then he imagined what happened if he did not. He felt sick. The flight ended only just in time for him, just before his arms gave way. He loosened Dory's ankles with a gasp and fell onto the rough platform of nigh Eagle's Eyrie. There he lay without speaking, and his thought was a mixture of surprise at being saved from the fire, and fear lest he fall off that narrow place in the deep shadows on the other side. He was feeling very strange indeed in his head by the time after the dreadful adventures of the last 3 days, with next to nothing to eat, and he found himself saying aloud, which I can show you guys this picture. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's in the book, but it's what Bilbo saw as he was flying. We're about to hit our first ad break. I have to go to the bathroom. I'm gonna speed read, okay, because we're about to hit our next chapter too. So I'm gonna speed read here. Knew what a piece of bacon felt like when it's suddenly picked out of the pan and a fork and put back onto the shelf. Actually, it's just I gotta go. So we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Okay. All right, we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Okay, we're back. You guys all got up and did something during the break? If you did, feel free to tell me what it was. I got up and I went to the bathroom. As I said, alright. I stretched a little bit, but let's actually all do that right now. Before we start up again, I want everyone to just get up. Take a little stretchy room. Hey. Whatever you gotta do. Alright. That's why my model's moving weird right now, is we're gonna stretch here, and stretch here. There we go. There we go.